Today we talked to Erika again for the second time. I hope the second of many, because Erika is, I'm her disciple. I just decided. I really feel Erika is just such a superstar within the unschooling and homeschooling community, because you say things in such a sharp way, sharp and respectful. Never have I heard you ever be disrespectful, or you can criticize things or people or systems without being hurtful, and that is a gift. And you could cut whatever sentence and it's just shining. I like it. I love it. So
Oh,
I've been
thank
looking
you.
forward. It really is true, man.
We
It's
need
true.
to talk
So
every
I've been
week.
looking. We should totally. Yeah. Okay. I'll send you an email about that. First, I have to walk the Camino, but then we're coming to Mexico, and we will be in the same time zone, which will help a
Oh,
lot.
okay. You have to let me know when you're in Mexico.
So, but we're flying December 19th.
October 19th.
Oh, October. Fuck, I'm tired.
Yeah.
The time zone thing again. October 19th, we're flying, but we are coming up to LA because maybe we should just start there. Should we start there? You're doing the game conference, aren't you?
In February.
Yeah, we're coming up for that.
Yeah, you should come.
Yeah, we are.
Show your support.
It is our plan.
So, with all the personal things said, we are going to do what we always do, just talk. And with you, it'll be so easy. We say one word and you talk for an hour, and then we say goodbye.
Yeah, and
sorry. It's just so
no, I've been pondering about a subject, and I asked you if we could talk about it, and you said you can talk about anything. So
pretty much.
The subject was that, well, I'm from Denmark. I am pretty white, and you have absolutely a darker skin color than I. So I wanted to ask about unschooling and homeschooling in America as a Black person, because what I have been pondering on is, if you send your kid to a school, even a Black school, if that's what you prefer for your children, then the curriculum is made by white. And do you think that affects the Black community's choice of homeschooling?
For some, yes. For others, it's a matter of being seen as a child first, and then Black second. People are always looking for, the Black community is so varied and so diverse in experience, in all kinds of things. What a Black family is looking for can't be quantified under one umbrella. There's so many different, many Black homeschoolers that I know, and Black unschoolers that I know, are doing it because they want to provide a consistent, respectful educational experience for their kids. And they don't want to have to break things down in order to build it back up. So they don't want to waste the time correcting. So many Black homeschoolers are homeschooling because they don't want to have to redo or build up their kids after a negative experience. I know for our family, it was just easier. I didn't have to cut through all the tape. There were talks that I didn't have to have. There were talks that I could have, and it not affect grades or their position in schooling. So my older two always went to school. They went to pretty elite schools. They did reasonably well. But as the years went on, it became harder and harder to get that reasonable experience. And by reasonable, I mean somewhat acceptable. There was always conflicts with subtle racism, subtle classism that we had to deal with. But in the beginning, it was just something that you dealt with. And as my children aged, especially the older three, I began to realize that so much of their educational experience in school was compromised that I wanted to figure out what education would look like without the compromise. And so my younger two got to experience a whole different educational experience, especially the third child. The third child is who I call my bi-schooler, because he went to traditional school, then he was homeschooled, unschooled, and then he chose to go to traditional high school and college. And then the youngest one was unschooled the whole time, except second grade, which is, in my opinion, if your child wants to try school, that's kind of the best, that's the sweet spot, because they'll get an academic experience, and they're still seen as children rather than as subjects and academic successes, except for when you're a Black boy, because you become a man right around 8 or 9, which is another reason why homeschooling works for a lot of families, is that adulting, that aging up of particularly Black boys, but Black girls are experiencing it at a rapid rate as well. So there's all kinds of reasons why for our family homeschooling works, and for a lot of Black, brown families it works, because like I said, you can spend your time having a great educational experience, and you don't have to qualify it by the negatives of a bad educational experience. So that's the way it works for me.
So
Go ahead.
explain to me, just because, you know, I'm from this little fairy tale country, very different from yours.
Yes.
And I'm white, and I have all the privileges in the world. And I find that most kids in the school system have forced maturing, like they're being pushed to grow up too fast. What's going on for the Black boys? Can I say Black?
Well,
Is that
so everything
that's even worse? Will you explain that to me? Because
so for a white boy, there's the expectation that they're boys, and that they'll make mistakes, and they'll do foolish things based on immaturity and a lack of knowledge, and a lack of, a lack of maturity for Black folks.
We're talking about something like an 11-year-old now, or a 10-year-old, just a boy.
We're talking about an 8-year-old. I'm not talking 10 or 11. I'm talking 8.
That's okay, like a little boy. Okay.
Yeah, that's the classic age when it's separated out. And from what I've heard of school districts, it's getting younger and younger. It's as young as 5 and 6. So a 5 and 6-year-old, a perfect example. You take the drinking fountain, and you decide that you're going to squirt water on people who come by. You're 6 or 7. You're 6 or 7. You decide it's the funniest thing in the world. You're going to squirt water on your classmates. For a white 6 or 7-year-old, they would be told that's not the thing to do. You shouldn't do that. They might be reprimanded. They may be said you're going to have to sit out recess or whatever. A Black boy does the same thing, and it's criminalized. They're punished.
Criminalized.
They're criminalized. It's like, how could you do that? You should have known better. 9 times out of 10, they'll be written up. It's a whole big process, because they should have known better. Same kids, same age, even in the same classroom with the same teacher, they're dealt with vastly differently. And so you're always.
What would be the skin color of that teacher?
It doesn't matter.
Does that matter? That doesn't matter. Okay.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because the socialization of the criminalization of Black boys is universal. It's not, occasionally you'll have a Black teacher that'll see a Black boy and recognize that it's just a boy being a boy. Occasionally you will see that, but it's very rare, because the system is set up to criminalize behavior from the start. I mean, you can go online and look up YouTube videos of 5-year-olds being arrested or 5-year-olds being having the police called on them. Perfect example, a young girl was selling lemonade just, on the corner, and the neighbor called the police saying, that shouldn't be permitted, and the police actually came out. Instead of that neighbor being told, no, a child selling lemonade is not criminal. They don't need a
He's
health
inspired by all the
card.
movies you have seen where it's done, and the cartoons where it's done, and it's it's like
completely normal.
It's complete. Okay, I felt privileged before, but now
this is just so bad.
It is.
It's hard to believe. I know that we have a community of Muslims in our country who experience somewhat the same. No matter what you do, you're brown and you wear a headscarf, and then therefore you're out. And
many East Indians in your country, particularly in the big cities, experience childhood criminalization. So something that would be seen as normal behavior, even teenage behavior, normal behavior for a white kid, is seen as the gateway to criminality in a child of color. So it's kind of universal. The less people you have that experience it because of population shifts, the less likely a white parent or citizen or person will see that activity. The more the numbers go up, the more people are made aware, because you can't avoid seeing it. So in most places in the world, I'm not even saying the US, in most places in the world, Black and brown children are criminalized at a very early age. The boys will be boys sentiment, girls are given grace. That sentiment is not the same for white kids versus kids of color. It just isn't. And it's in every country, in every situation. It's just really, really sad and a tough nut to crack. Even in the world school community, when you're traveling with children, you have to be careful how they're seen. You have to read the room, so to speak, and make sure that your child is not going to be penalized for the color of their skin. And it's not just in the United States. We've had many conversations at World Schooling Summits about how different children are treated differently in different countries. So it's kind of, it's less than at home. And I think a lot of the less is you're not paying attention as much because you're having all these new experiences. But when you're settled and calm, you can see the differences. So it's, and it's unfortunate.
So to go back, no, but it would then it's I mean, it's a really helpful thing to then, as you say, if you homeschool your kids so they don't have those experiences, so they can be allowed to just grow up as humans and be a family.
Well, they don't have as much of those experiences, and you're alongside them when they're having them. But even as homeschoolers, we have those experiences. A good example of it is there was a conference that we were at. Oh gosh, it's been many years, like maybe, goodness gracious, he's old.
There was a conference.
Yeah, there was a conference. There was a conference. Oh gosh, it's almost 20 years ago, where we arrived at the hotel after many people had checked in and were settled. We arrived at the hotel. We literally parked the car And my son jumped out and ran ahead of us because he could see some of his friends. And so I had called out to him, you need to come get your bag, kind of simple. And he goes, I'll be right back. I just want to see who's here. And he runs in, and I grab a bag and follow him, because it's what you do. He was 12 or 11 or 12. And I'm walking in, and he is one security person has his arm on him, and the other one is pointing at him and questioning him. And I'm like, what's going on? And they turn around and they say to me, you know, we've said repeatedly not to play with the elevators. And I said, we just got here. How was he playing with the elevator? And they said, no, he's been. And I said, no, he hasn't. I can even show you the rental car receipt saying the time we left the airport, he hasn't been here.
Yeah.
And then I started to get angry, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? And I got really loud because I wanted, number one, everyone around us to know what was going on. And number two, I wanted him to know that I was going to be big and bold, not reasonable and calm. And I said, number one, get your hand off my son. And number two, take me to your supervisor, because this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And just as we were going around the corner, more security were coming because they heard me. And they said, what is the problem here? And I said, the problem here is one of your comrades had their hand on my son, accusing him of something that wasn't possible. And they're like, what do you mean it wasn't possible? I said, we just pulled up. The elevators are deep in the hotel. They're not even near where we were. I said, it isn't possible that he was playing with the elevators. And I want to know why the assumption was made that he was. And everything got quiet, because there's not a lot of Black people at unschooling conferences. As a matter of fact, there are 3 or 4 families. And so everything got quiet. And all of a sudden I hear these feet coming, and it's the manager. And the manager knows what's up. And the manager knows, by the way I'm speaking, I'm an intelligent, resourced person. And so he comes up to me and he says, is there a problem? And I said, I'm sure you heard that there was. Wrong answer. Wrong question. And so he looks at his staff and he says, what's going on? And they said, we repeatedly asked him not to play on the elevators. And I said, and I repeatedly told them that we just arrived. So we weren't the people playing on the elevators. And I want to know why it was assumed that he was. And the manager looked dead at me and said, I must apologize. I think an assumption was made that shouldn't have been made. I said, right answer. Right answer. And I expect compensation for this slight. And he says, absolutely. Absolutely. We will take care of this. And I said, oh no, you're going to take care of it now, not will, now. You're going to take care of it now, because my son experienced this now. He's not experiencing 20 minutes from now, and he didn't experience it yesterday. He experienced it now, and I want the solution to be now, because I want him to learn to stand up for himself and to not be afraid to speak to inappropriate transactional experiences. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yes, I understand perfectly what you're saying. And so he was apologized to, given a certificate so that he could buy something at the gift shop, and they gave us a night free of lodging in compensation for the slight. And I wrote a letter to corporate, got another apology, got another coupon for whatever, and I said, more than anything, I want your staff to be trained not to see race as their indicator of criminal activity, especially when it's a 12-year-old boy who looked more like an 8-year-old, because my children are kind of small. I have a big personality and I'm a big person, but my children are not. My sons have always been slight and small for their age. So it really looked ridiculous. I mean, it really looked ridiculous. And I have to preface this by saying my son is more Jesper's complexion, blue eyes, blackish hair. So it wasn't even a brown
On top
black
of it,
kid.
oh,
They really had to reach for it because he's quite fair
yeah.
and blue-eyed, and it doesn't escape the
No,
criminality, this assumption
no.
made that no matter who you are or what situation is, the first thought inkling, especially for security and people in power, is criminality. You're setting yourself up, and so it happens in all instances, in all communities, in all settings. It's not just school.
Yeah.
Although school has a
No.
unique way of reinforcing negative stereotypes and taken as normal. So a lot of Black homeschoolers and unschoolers, the first layer of that assumption is removed because you're around caring people, but you still see it in good people, in our friends. We've had uncomfortable conversations with many of our friends because they make assumptions that we're the good ones, and that doesn't help either. It doesn't help that you set us aside because you know us, versus really breaking down those structures of assumption that are so.
And I was thinking about the curriculum as well. In schools, I think that might also be slightly turned.
Probably not slightly.
No.
No, not slightly. It's pretty.
No.
It's pretty overt.
Very much
right
the white
now.
man's story. I mean, that's what it is. And
Yeah.
and then we're trying, some forces are trying to change that, but maybe we should just break it down to zero and start over,
Right.
and let people make their own curriculum.
Yeah.
And see what makes sense for them to learn. I think, of course, we can't relate really being from a white country, fairy tale Denmark.
No.
But in a way, there are similarities to the ageism problem that I find my children find very offensive, and it's nothing compared to, I know,
right,
but it is something that it has some similarities. When just because you're 11 years old, you can't be trusted to understand what's going on, and just because you're a child, it's so clear when we walk into, let's say, museums. We were just at the Tate Gallery to see William Turner paintings, and you have these custodians in the corner, and when I approach a painting and look closely because I want to see how the brushwork is,
sure,
it's like this, it's like a few centimeters from, no problem. If my kids do the same, they're like almost running over, grabbing them, because they don't trust children to be able to look at painting.
Correct.
It's not the same, but it's similar. And I know how much that pisses off our children when they are being treated differently just because they're shorter or younger.
Yeah.
To not be trusted with
anything. Imagine if you have that. So the assumption that you don't know anything. And the same child, the assumption is you're older, you should know better. So you're classified a child.
Be going on top of each other.
Yes. So there's a lot of oppression is known by everyone. Everyone has a piece, something that is othered. Everyone has it. Even the richest person, they're not as well educated. They have a lot of money, but they're not as well educated. So we're going to talk down to them. Or a child where you're young or you're old. There's age discrimination. You won't understand this. You're old. I'm experiencing that. The invisibility of being older. And then the immediate I'm seen for my skin color as a criminal. So I'm followed in the store, but I'm never helped because I'm old. So it's like, and I won't get a good sale out of her. So it's like, I want the person who follows me around to help me, to actually put me first in the line to get me out of the store. I mean, I want the convenience of having a person following me around for help. So I almost want to go up to security and say, will you hold these bags? Because if you're going to follow me around the store, you might as well be useful. You know, those kinds of things. It's incredible. I'll go up to a counter with all of my packages, wait in line, and then the person behind the counter will point to the person 3 people behind me and say, "Can I help you?" And I say, "Damn." In those instances, I always say, "Damn, I wish I was at the bank." That's where I want to be invisible. So I can walk into the vault, get the cash, and leave.
Yeah.
I don't want to be invisible at the cheesemongers. I don't want to be invisible at the department store. I want to be invisible at the bank, so it can work for me. You know, it's an interesting dichotomy. But you're right. Any kind of slight oppression based on someone's ideal of you versus you, the actual person, any dehumanization is felt in such a particular way, and it can either make you very sensitive to oppressing others, or it can make you desensitive to oppressing others, and it make you angry. And the next time when I'm at that age, I'm going to be the one that stops the child from getting close to the page because it was done to me, or I'm going to make sure I don't do that because it was done to me. It's the level of empathy and education and communication that makes it so that stops. Like I've been told very often, if I'm in a place and there are children present, I almost become childlike. I get to their level and find out how I can use my height, age, and experience to elevate their experience. And I show them the way. So I talk about it. I don't just do it and they're the benefit. I let them know I don't have to do this, but I choose to do it because I want you to have an elevated experience like I'm going to have. So letting the younger generation know how you can use your privilege to help others is just as important as using your privilege to help others. If they don't know what you're doing, it's for naught. So I always try to point out to young people that I'm helping, to old people that I'm helping, to anyone that I'm using my particular privilege, and who knows what it is, because it changes. I let them know this is how it's done. This is how we community build. I think there's a lack of communication by good people. I think good people just do the work and they don't explain what they're doing. And so therefore it's taken for advantage and for granted versus it's enveloped by our community. Like I've been to Denmark several times. I love the country. It reminds me so much of where I grew up. That in Stockholm, because Seattle is platted, kind of like Stockholm. They're very much straight lines. You know where you're going. The second you get somewhere, you're almost guided by GPS to go to the right way. Whereas in Denmark, you meander a bit, but it's still a very cohesive meandering. There's purposeful, very few dead ends. There are very few ways you can go wrong in the major cities. I don't know about the small towns, but in the major cities, there's very little, oh, gee, where am I? You basically can find your way around. Seattle's a lot like that because of the hills and everything. You really try to avoid, the grid that takes you up hills and all this stuff. I'm talking as an older person, but when I'm in country, when I'm in
Scandinavia, have hills in our country.
Yeah, exactly. It's a Seattle dream.
Because it's a dream now, when you're a little bit elderly, you know, no hills. It's all flat everywhere.
It's like I moved from Seattle to Connecticut, which is very flat, very what they call mountains, we don't even call hills. And then I moved to San Francisco, which is, the hill capital of the world. I mean, I feel like I should be yodeling every every time I leave my house, the hills are so high. But what I've noticed about the Scandinavian countries is there's a lot of assumptions made of empathy and kindness. There's a lot of assumptions made by Danes and by Swedes that it's kindness first, it's empathy first, it's community first. And that can be a good thing, and it also can be a curse, because the assumption that you're going to conform is very strong and powerful. So along with the empathy and the more humane comes the assumption you're going to do it the way it's always been done. And if you want to change things up, because everything can be improved, if you want to change things up, you're seen as an interloper, a disruptor of progress. And by progress, I mean, we've done this for 500 years and we're going to do it for 500 more. And if you want to do something different, you need to leave. Instead of saying, let's embrace something new and make what we have even better. It gets to be a little difficult to confront what always was. So you have a lot of expats from Scandinavia that are all over the world simply because they didn't want to conform to what always was. And they want to bring that level of being able to forge their own path, being able to do their own thing somewhere else. And for the better, in a lot of the communities the Scandinavians are in, it's for the better. It improves everything that we're doing. But on the other hand, you have this dichotomy of we're idyllic, special, and important, but we can learn from the people who can't live in that system. What do you desire to be better? How do you desire to make it better? We can learn from countries that are successful at taking care of their citizens and giving their citizens a proper education and an opportunity to branch out. Because anytime you leave your country for another country to live, it tells me your country prepared you well for going out on your own. So, but also too, it lets me know that growth in your instance can't happen there. So what needs to change? So you want to leave, not you have to leave. And I have a lot of expat friends from all over the world that say, I had to leave because I couldn't do this. I couldn't live this, and this. So it's all.
Well, you're talking to some. We're sitting here in our van in France.
Because
we had to leave. We had to leave at least for a while, maybe.
But it needs to be, that leaving needs to be understood, because it's helpful for the rest of the world to understand there's no idyllic place. It's always participation. It's always choice. If it's none of that, it doesn't matter how idyllic the place is. If there isn't a choice to express yourself in the way you want to, and you're encouraged to grow in the way you need to grow, there's room for improvement. Even the best places, there should always be introspection. There should always be thought. How can we be better? No one should be able to rest on their laurels.
No. And earlier today, we recorded a podcast, which will be the one people can hear the week before this one, with a wonderful man named Randall from UK, who are acting for the unschooling and homeschooling movement in UK. Wonderful fella. And with him, we had a long talk about family, how for him, unschooling and homeschooling is about setting family first, and not, there is this, families are being broken apart by the school system in a way that is starting to, I'm starting to understand it on a deeper level, I think now. And that is, I would love to hear your thoughts about homeschooling and unschooling and the families.
Well, you have to go back to the 1840s and the Industrial Revolution and the capitalization and the monetization of everything. Because before the Industrial Revolution, what was monetized was pretty much rich versus poor. So the poor people were in survival mode, and they basically were monetized by the upper classes. So your worth was based on what you could grow, what you could provide for the upper classes. Not even the royal. Let's take them out. Just the upper classes. So you have the landholders and the landowners, and you have the workers. And the worker grew enough crops to feed its family, and then what was left over was monetized so that they could get seed to grow crops. They basically, it was hand to mouth. It wasn't, I'm gonna grow this so I can buy a farm and set myself up for whatever. Then the Industrial Revolution happens, and all of a sudden, everything becomes a commodity. Everything is monetized, including children. And so the school system was set up based on that monetization. So you come into the school system, they first decide if you're going to go past 4th grade and then past 8th grade and to university, whatever. That's decided very early on by family standards, by your quick wit, by your ability to impress someone. If you go all through your life and you don't impress that person at 4, 6, 8, 10, the die is set, and you're going to either be a worker, or you're going to be a manager of workers, or you're going to elevate yourself out of your class situation. But they made sure that elevation was difficult by schooling. So they told you very early on what you were capable of, irregardless of any kind of personal experience with you. They looked at your family structure, they looked at what your father and grandfather did, and they decided for you, this is what you're going to be. Your monetization level was this, and your expectation of improving your lot was nil. Maybe it was 2%, maybe it was 5%, maybe it was, or maybe you had a spark. You found somebody who believed in you that was upper class, and they pulled you up. Everything was based on that monetization. Now, come into the 20th century, the Industrial Revolution is starting to wane, and that's why we had wars, by the way, to thin the herd and to make things scarce. The education model didn't shift. We were still labeling, classing, preparing people for different tracks. Once the Industrial Revolution got to the point where we were producing much more than we needed to consume, which has been the last almost 100 years, where everything is grossly overproduced. There is no real need in the world. There is no real need in the world. There's enough food being thrown away to feed everyone in the world 3 times over. So it's been determined. Droughts, all the excuses they give for hunger, it's just bullshit. Okay? To just be blunt, it's just greed-based, it's monetized-based. I'm not going to give away my product. I'd rather burn it, destroy it, trash it, than use it for good. Because the capitalistic system, the monetization system, won't work if everybody's satisfied, if everybody's well-fed, if everybody has a place. So how do you reinforce that? Through education. So you say that there are good schools and there are great schools. You say there's good opportunity, there's great opportunity, and you monetize being a criminal. That's what's happened in the United States. We've monetized our prison system, we've monetized our justice system. The more criminals we have, the more people in prison we have, the richer that class of people gets. And we don't educate against that class. As a matter of fact, we educate to perpetuate the prison system in the United States. So everything has been criminalized. The most simplistic things that 50 years ago were handled as just bad behavior, and you stay after school and you work it off with a crazy maniacal teacher, it's now criminalized. If you are truant, if you skip school, it's a criminal offense, not only for the child, but for the parent. It's we've criminalized so many things that were naturally handled by the family. And we've enforced impossible conditions on families. So we require all the adults in the household and anyone close to adulthood to work outside of the household. We don't provide for or even encourage someone to be the keeper of the family and someone else to be the monetized person that brings in the income. That's almost impossible in many places in the world, if not most places in the world. It's very, very difficult to have someone that's the keeper of the family. And so what has happened is education comes in and decides and professes to be that familiar structure that in generations past was your grandmother, was your aunt, was your mother or your father or someone in your family or even the neighbor. And it was local and it was close and it was very, very human. We've gone from that to a system and a process of educating based on the dehumanization and based on you being a product rather than a human, rather than a person who belongs to a family. So in some instances, school education was and still is for many, many people in the world that ticket out of an oppressive system. But for many, many others, it's the exact opposite. It's their ticket into a place where they're dehumanized. So trying to find that balance. The young women in Afghanistan that want to go to school is juxtapositioned against the young Danish child that just wants autonomy so that they can grow up with their family intact. And we have those two images bumping up against each other. And what's taking advantage of that difference is the folks that want to maintain oppression and oppressive systems that monetize everything. And they're happy to see us looking like we're working at cross purposes, when in actuality, it's the same purpose, which is humans, their humanness being honored. And we can homeschool, we can pluck out, 10, 11% of the population of the world and give them a world-class First Nations educational experience. I did that for my kid. You're doing that for your kids. But what will be the real effect? What will be the real effect if we don't reach out beyond ourselves and say, I want something better for the kids that can't be homeschooled? Because there's hundreds of millions of kids that will never have the opportunity that our kids have. So how do we improve the world so that even those that don't have that opportunity still are in a humane environment? So I get a lot of flack because I'm all about education on all levels, not just homeschoolers, unschoolers. I would love it if the whole world was unschooled. I think a lot of our problems would be solved. I think a lot of diseases would be cured. I think a lot of things that are wrong in the world would be righted by unschooling. I absolutely believe that, because unschooling for me is taking your talent, your propensity, and just going as far as you can with it. And I think with that kind of encouragement, a lot of things would be solved. The reality is most people are going to go to a bricks and mortar school or no school at all. That's the reality. Most people will be educated in this rudimentary, oppressive manner, or they will have no education opportunity at all. It seems to be that's the way of the world. And as long as, what is it, 48 people? 48 people in the world have 90% of the wealth. As long as that's a thing, it's going to be very difficult to extract ourselves from a system that is absolutely failing us the world over. It starts with this imagination of borders. It starts with telling people you can't live here if you're not this person, you're not this citizen, you weren't born here. It's all so ridiculous. This planet is so small. It kind of made sense 200 years ago when it took you, a month-long, a 2-month-long voyage to get somewhere else. But if I can get on a plane and in 10 hours be completely on another side of the planet, we need to start talking about how realistic is it to tell people, oh, you're in an undeveloped or underdeveloped place and you have to stay there, even though the developed places took all your resources to create.
Their
It just,
development, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I don't understand why. I do understand, but I like saying I don't understand because maybe one more person will listen because they can tell me. I'm always saying, if you want to know what someone knows, have them teach you what they know. Let them be your teacher, not you teach them, but let them teach you. And you'll find out what they know and what they don't know, and what their propensities are and what they aren't. And I would really like someone to explain to me, like I'm in kindergarten, why, if you're in a country that was a colony of another country, why you can't go to that country and claim citizenship and claim participation, because they exploited your country for generations, for centuries. You should be able to say, oh, I was a part of Italy or Portugal or Denmark or whatever. I was a part of this system of colonization. They took the resources and they, developed their countries quite nicely. I think I should be able to come. I should be able to come and try my luck. And if your answer is, no, you're poor, you don't speak our language, you don't look like us, then I think those people should be allowed to go to that government and say, we need our resources back. Not those exact things, but a monetary, so you can support us for 200 years at XYZ number of dollars and cents, so we can build up our infrastructure, so we can build our schools and build our farms and build our roads and our energy systems and all of the things that you took 200 years to do with our resources. I say you give us the same amount of resources and the same amount of time to develop our place. And then you have an argument. What happens is whenever the resources come to these places, guess who else comes? We're seen as expats. In Mexico. In Mexico, Americans are seen as expats. A Mexican that wants to come to America is seen as an illegal immigrant. But Americans going to Mexico, oh, that's smart retirement planning. That's a great thing. That's a great thing to do. That's a great thing to do.
Yeah.
It boggles the mind as long as it's the oppressive country developing an oppressed country. It's all good. You should be happy to have our money. You should be happy to have our money. But if it's in the reverse and they're bringing something of value, they're willing to work in the fields, they're willing to invest in businesses, they're willing to be here and contribute, all of a sudden, oh, that's a horrible thing. And it just boggles the mind. In the 21st century, we're still treating migrants, treating people who want to live other places as if they're pariahs, versus if the ruling class wants to go anywhere in the world, it's a boon. It's investment. It's all these great things. It's like, okay, come on, come on. Yeah. But at the same time, we just can't get away from those clannish structures of who belongs and who doesn't belong. And the great American experiment, which to me is just on the precipice of not being anymore, because there's so much rampant misinformation, rampant just out and out lies of what it is to be an American. I just don't I'm hopeful that we can pull ourselves out of the spiral, but I'm not convinced. I'm hopeful, which is kind of like a dream, but I'm not convinced because we're so busy looking at what's great. Just like in Denmark, there's so many great things about Denmark, but if you're not looking at what's not great, the great things won't last long. You've got to have your eye on what makes it hard to be here. What makes it hard to raise a family here? What makes it hard to be an individual here? What would make it better? How can we improve ourselves? The minute you sit on what's good, the bad just bowls over you because they're always looking for opportunity.
For example, Denmark is praised for the social security system and all that. But one of the things I see is that by having such a secure country, it also makes it not my problem when my family members, something happens to them. When my parents gets old, they have money, there's a nursing home, they can go through it, all paid through the taxes, which actually makes me not wanting to care.
Yes.
I do not want to take care of them because I've been raised in it's not your problem when they grow old. Yes. It's the society's problem when they grow old.
But even our parents are raised in that culture and they think that they shouldn't bother us. I just got noticed today that my dad had been in the hospital the past 2 weeks. No one told me until he came out.
Yes.
Just because it shouldn't be my problem. I would very much like to know that, you know.
But the dehumanization of womb to tomb health, underlying all of that is the dehumanization. It turns people into commodities. And of course, I went to the hospital. I could go to the hospital. I had good care. Why should you know? That's my business. That separation, that dehumanization, everybody sees it with children, but no one sees it on the other end with adults. And it starts with children being a part of rather than belonging to. And when I say that, people are like, what do you mean? I said, being a part of something is easy. I can put rocks in a pile and they're a part of the pile, but belonging to something is completely different. I'm going to care about what happens when you belong to me. If I'm a part of something and everything has been conveniently taken care of, and you've been convinced because you have high taxes and all this social care, you really are free to be yourself. No, you're not. You're free to be yourself as long as nothing's wrong. As long as you have no need, it's all great. But how many
you're free to be yourself as long as you do it within that structure of the way you can be yourself.
It goes back to what I was saying about, it goes back to what I'm saying about systems that we admire everywhere. All systems have flaws. Once you remove the humanness of the system, once you take out the humanity, all you're left with is a commodity. And no human will always fit in that in that form. As long as you're healthy, well, able, fill in all the blanks, it seemingly looks like it works, except no one's ever always in that spot. You either have a grandparent, you have a parent, you have you yourself. You're gonna fall into need, and then the system really shows itself.
But Erika, and now I will place the future of the world on your shoulders.
Erika for president.
Erika for president.
Of the universal state.
No, but
it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work.
No.
But
all
my
that
question
power.
is, but the question is, Erika, seeing the problems, that's a good thing. It's start of the waking up. Part of my deschooling is seeing and then understanding it. But then we should also talk about how do we rehumanize, even on small scale. So what are your suggestions of what we can do?
So So for me personally, on a small scale level, on a couple hundred people, Laney's World School of Family Summits, the intimacy of those 5 days, the ability to talk to people from different places whose goal is to be world citizens and to participate in the world, not just in their little pocket of joy or whatever, but actually to move around. Those are perfect examples of giving people the opportunity that have the means, because that's who we're talking about, where change is going to come from. I'm sorry, people that have means, raising people that have means to look at these things, these structures, and try to break them down. To me, that's the only way it's going to happen. It's not only people who are impoverished and are being crushed by the systems, but the people who can relatively move with ease. So even after all that I've talked to you about, on the large scale of things, we have a successful family. People are doing what they can do to survive. They're not wildly rich. They're not thriving at times. Sometimes there's a struggle, but in comparison to most of the world, we're golden. We can travel, we can do what we need to do and what we want to do. If people of means start getting together to expose themselves to other people of means, to see we have the same commonalities, we have the same flaws in our systems of governance, we have the same flaws in our system of family structure. Let's get together and set some examples out in the world. Let's talk about and then reseed where we go, talking to other people about our experiences. Yeah, 2 million people are not going to be able to attend a World School Family Summit. But if those 200 or so, 400 or so, 600 or so people that get together for the 5 days, they go back where they come from or go back to where they're going and seed that and say, oh, there's another way to do this. And here's what I learned talking with, this person from Singapore or that person from Australia or that person from Morocco. Here's what I've learned talking to them, because I have real live lived world experience. Not what I'm being fed through the media, not what I'm being fed through TikTok or YouTube, but I've actually spent time, broke bread, watched the family structure and how it works and doesn't work live, in person, in real time. How I've had this conversation with you because I met you. See what I'm saying? That actual live human contact. We have to encourage that. And Zoom helps, but we got to get out of the fantasy of getting it in sound bites. It takes time to develop. Couple of days to feel comfortable talking with somebody on a real life basis. I'm unusual, you're unusual, and you could strike up a conversation with someone and feel comfortable extending that conversation beyond. Most people aren't comfortable doing that, and recognizing that most people need time and an innocuous event so that they can be distracted by the event if the communication doesn't work. Recognizing that that's how a lot of people operate is the first goal to seeding these ideals out in the wild, out with different structures.
I think that what you're saying is really important. It only takes a few people to make a big change. And
absolutely.
In ways, it's true. And you said that Laney's World School Summits really brings people together from everywhere to talk about how can we live a life of freedom, a meaningful life where things make sense and we have respect and kindness and
we're contributing.
Exactly, and we can be part of something bigger than just doing. And
I also think it was important because they're doing work with teens, which I think is awesome and really important. But I also think that the family, the familiarness of the family summits is very important, because people got to see grandparents with their they got to see family structures. And most things that efforts for improvement of our societies are based on age, gender. They're all separated out. It's very rare that you attend something and it's the whole family. The kids have an opportunity to bond with other kids, but they also get to see other parents bonding with their children, and they get to see the whole family structure outside of, you know, you guys in a bus, or the people in hubs all over the world. They really got to see people that were doing this as a vacation, or that were doing this full time as road school or as world school, or they were doing this, they were dipping their toe in to see if it's something they could do. That was so important for the young people to see all these different options outside of their own family and outside of what's normal. It was so healthy to be able to see. I had so many young people come up to me and say, you were really helpful with this. I liked your talk about that. But what I like most is you don't have kids and you're here. You don't have, you're not here as somebody's grandma. You're here as a world citizen that wants to be seen and wants to see how the world is developing for the next generation. I want to be the seed of the tree I never see. And that's really hard to get at these days. Everybody wants to see the fruit before they contribute. Like, will I get, is it fast growing corn, or is it an oak tree? Are you an acorn or a corn, or a corn kernel? Most people like to be the corn kernel because they see their progress at the end of a very short time. I'm an acorn. I'm planting seeds for trees I will never see the shade of. I will never experience. But hopefully my further generations, and even if there's no further generations, if the further generations of the world see my acorn, my tree, my effort, even if they never know my name, I don't, there is no greater glory for me. So I'm hoping that we all can reach out and give whatever we can give to changing structures and systems that don't honor the family and don't honor our humanness. I'm hoping we can change. I'm hoping we can change the world by homeschooling, unschooling, world schooling. I'm hoping we can change the world. I'm hoping, even if the desire is only to watch us, there's change in those, in watching the YouTubes, the podcasts. Even if you never leave your home because of financial, family, whatever circumstances, knowing that this exists, knowing that this is possible, that has to be a part of all that we do, is showing people the possibilities. Because that's all I'm doing now in the 4th, 5th, 6th act. I can't even keep track of how many acts I've had. I'm it's amazing to me how quickly time flies. I say this to every person that has a young person in their home. The days are long, but the years are short. You will not believe how quickly. I mean, my youngest will be 31 in a couple of weeks, and I'm like, I remember when he was drooling.
Yeah.
I remember when
Wonderful baby.
he needed me for everything. And now it's like,
But,
let me get a phone call every once in a while. Just let me know.
yeah.
Kind of life. Yeah.
Do that. Erika, it's about time. So I would say it has been such a big pleasure, and I think we again should continue the conversation.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we need more Erika, and we need the we want to do our little part in putting some water and sun on the acorn so it can grow strong.
I appreciate
Thanks
it.
a lot for your time.
That image of the oak tree really gave me some hope. I'll take that with me. Last time we spoke, I still have like an echo is the kindness talk we had, and now I'll think about what I do with more hope, because you're right. The impact is reaching far, and sometimes you just can't see it here and now. So
Right.
I'll think about my kindness and my oak tree, and then we'll talk again.
Yes, absolutely.
After.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.